Hi, welcome to another presentation produced by Grow a Strong Family and organized and developed by me, Mara Briere. I am a master's level family life educator certified through the National Council of Family Relations and the founder of Grow a Strong Family, which is a nonprofit organization that provides support for families uprooted by mental illness. This particular discussion is called the 7 C's. We would like to thank our many supporters, including you and Shana 15, for the funding that allows us to produce these presentations. In this webinar, we are going to be finding out what the 7 C's are, what are some strategies, and some ways to have celebrations. Welcome to this presentation of the 7 C's. The first C is I did not cause it. I did not cause this mental illness that is affecting our family. Mental illness is caused by a combination of genetic predisposition, environmental influences, and inborn temperament, which is one of the reasons that we know that twins who have different life experiences, one twin can develop a mental illness and the other not. And that's what gives us some insight into how it has something to do with environment and inborn temperament, in addition to a combination of genetic predisposition. Mental illness is a biological illness. It affects the brain, just like heart disease affects the heart and diabetes affects the pancreas and so on. What we do know is that when there is mental illness in the family, there is a statistically higher coincidence of mental illness in other family members, very similar to heart disease, diabetes, and substance use disorders, just to name a few. Each illness has distinctive impacts on lifestyle, and medications may or may not be effective. This is true with many illnesses, but especially true with mental illness, because with mental illness, which is a biological illness, and you're dealing with the brain, frankly, we don't know a lot about how the brain works. We're getting better, but we're not very good at it. So we do the best we can. The other thing that we are aware of is that medications often have side effects, and sometimes we weigh out for ourselves whether the side effects are worth it based on whatever it is that we're trying to be managing. And this is true with any medication. We see all those commercials that say, this is supposed to prevent headaches, for example, and yet one of the major side effects is headaches. Well, if it's supposed to prevent headaches and a side effect is headaches, I'm not so sure I want to do that if I'm in the middle of an episode of many headaches. Um, but that's just an example, and I think it's also very true with many of the medications that are used to treat mental illnesses. I can't control it. While chronic illnesses may be stabilized with a combination of medications, lifestyle changes, and education around the illness, it's really up to the individual who has the illness. So, as much as we love people, love is not enough to fix them, repair them, make them feel better, have them invest in themselves. That is all up to the individual, no matter how well or unwell they may be. And we see this throughout our lives. The very fact remains we have no control over other people, places, and things. And we certainly have no control over brain disorders like mental illnesses. I can't cure it. Like other chronic illnesses, there are no cures for mental illnesses. We know that there are no cures for heart disease, that there are ways to manage it, and there are times perhaps that somebody may go into remission. We know there is no cure for diabetes. And again, it's the same thing. There is no cure for mental illness. There are ways to manage it, often with a combination of medication, therapy, lifestyle changes. But none of that is foolproof, and none of that is perfect, and none of that is perfect all of the time. So we have to think in terms of the long term when somebody is diagnosed with a mental illness. And as family members, it's helpful for us to remember that this is a chronic disease and that mental illnesses, which are chronic illnesses, probably need a different set of solutions than an acute episode like a cold. There are treatments to modify symptoms. There may be periods of remission, but there are no known cures through science, medicine, alternative therapies, and certainly nothing within your own control. We even tell doctors that healing themselves usually doesn't work, and they will tell you that as well. What you can do is take care of yourself. As the airlines have taught, oxygen masks on ourselves first. Then we can focus on others. If we're not breathing, there is no way we can help our dependents figure out how to put the oxygen mask on. So we really need to recall that and that imagery of taking the oxygen mask, putting it on ourselves first so that we can breathe, so that we can stay clear-headed, so that we can assess each situation and respond to it more appropriately than if we're denied oxygen. So taking care of ourselves is essential. We need to be well enough to manage the needs of others. We need to be well enough to identify the needs of others. And we need to be well enough so that we stay well, so that we can continue to manage situations that are at times dangerous or vexing or seemingly unending. We need to be available, and we can't be available if we're not taking good, loving care of ourselves. In order for us to take good, loving care of ourselves, we need to have routines for daily activities that nurture us and maintain healthy boundaries. This could be going to support groups, going to work, eating healthy breakfasts, once in a while indulging in a hot fudge ice cream sundae, connecting with family and friends. If you have a faith, then using your faith to pray or to inform how to move forward, to volunteer if you have the opportunity to, and to identify for yourself what makes you feel good. I often tell clients you might need to schedule 15 minutes a day, regardless of what's going on in your life or around you, just for you. Turn your phone off. If there is an emergency, it will be an emergency 15 minutes from now. And during that 15 minutes, what do you want to do? Do you want to write? Do you want to sing a song? Do you want to dance? Do you want to go outside and just breathe fresh air? Whatever it is, if it means just starting with 15 minutes, that's what I encourage folks to do. And then I start to increase it in 15-minute increments as we get more confident. As we get more confident, we get much better at taking good, loving care of ourselves. And the other thing that we do when we do this is we model for our loved ones who are not well how to develop a routine for themselves, maintain it, and take good, loving care of themselves to the best of their ability. It will make for a more harmonious family, and the relationships have a better likelihood of remaining non contentious overall. And what I mean by this is there are times when the symptoms of our loved ones' illnesses can make them very contentious and make us very contentious because we may not even recognize what's going on. And that's why it becomes so important to have those routines. The routines are more important for us during times of stress and tension than they are on a day to day basis. It's the day to day basis that gives us the habit or the pattern that will sustain us during rough times. It is that which gives us our resilience. We have to learn how to communicate our feelings. This is what it means when we say healthy boundaries. Knowing how to identify and talk about what is important in ways that diffuse triggering our loved ones and ourselves. This means that sometimes we have to develop, acquire, utilize a whole different set of skills than the ones we have typically used in order to connect with our other people in our lives, our other loved ones, our friends. So one of the things that I encourage people to do, and I got this through from Al-Anon, although I did take the photo from Common Care Community licensing. Before you speak, think. Is it true? Whatever it is that you need to be talking about with your loved one, is it true? Is it helpful? Is it inspiring? Is it necessary? Is it kind? And I'll give you an example. Let's say your loved one is starting to ramp up, and one of the symptoms that tends to show itself is irritability. So they get really snippy and short-tempered. They become very aggressive in their speech, disrespectful and inconsiderate. In I know with my loved ones, one of the ways it shows up is with very carefully enunciated words. And when I stop and think, I begin to identify, oh, that even though it feels disrespectful and inconsiderate and thoughtless, and in fact it might be all of those things, it's not coming from a place of disrespect or inconsideration or thoughtlessness. It is a symptom of their illness. So that's why it's important to say, well, is it true? Are they really disrespectful to me? Are they always disrespectful to me? Is this a pattern we have in our relationship, or is this what happens when my loved one is unwell? Is it going to be helpful for me to identify and say something to him or her at this point in time? In my case, it's not usually very helpful with some of my family members because it tends to escalate the disagreement or the symptom presentation. But with other family members, it becomes a way to have a conversation about tweaking medications. Over time, you will figure this out. It is a process, and we figure these things out over time. So asking ourselves, is it helpful, is useful because with this family member it is, but with that one it is not, or it is not helpful at this time. Is it inspiring? Not everything we say, not everything that comes out of our mouths is going to be inspiring. We can agree about that. But is it enough to cause a change in behavior or a change in our loved one's approach to us? So, like I said, when I speak to one family member, what it does is it informs her that we need to have a conversation about medication and tweaking it. With another family member, it will just create an escalated situation, which is very uninspiring for both of us because it doesn't become a situation that's helpful. Is it necessary? It might be necessary, but it doesn't have to be spoken necessarily. It could be, I would certainly say something to the loved one who would take the information as an opportunity to explore her behavior and make some changes. But with the other family member that I might say something to, it might be just more necessary for me to be aware of what's going on so that I can have better control over my responses. And is it kind? If I can't respond in a kind way, then this isn't time that I need to say nothing. When somebody is symptomatic, very often it is the caregivers who are the triggers. So if you can't deliver what you need to say in a kind way, then better to wait until you can. I know that this has been a hard lesson for me because I've been so well trained to say, I don't let anybody talk to me that way. Well, this is true under most circumstances, but when it becomes a certain circumstance that's going to escalate an already difficult situation, I probably will withhold saying anything until it can come out of my mouth with kindness and compassion. The Seven Challenges Workbook is a phenomenal resource on how to create cooperative communication. And what I really like about it, and it is available on the website, growastrongfamily.org, what I really like about it is that it not only offers skills, but it also offers lots of examples. And we've all heard about the I messages. I feel angry when you are nasty at me, so I'm going to leave the room. That's the traditional I message. In this case, what we do is we say the first part of the I message is, what did you see or hear or otherwise sense? And we basically keep it concrete. Stay with the five senses, what you hear, smell, taste, hear, smell, taste, see, or touch. Um, You want it to be as concrete as possible. When you are trying to communicate with somebody who is symptomatic, their brain isn't working quite right, and they're starting to ramp up with their symptoms, you want your speaking to be very clear, very short, and also very concrete. And the example they use is when I saw the dishes in the sink, how did you feel? And here we had two opportunities. One is when I saw the dishes in the sink, I felt happy. Or, as is more often the case with families I work with, when I saw the dishes in the sink, I felt irritated. Because why? Why did you feel the way that you felt? How are you interpreting it? What is it that's going on for you? Because an I message is about me, or in this case, you. So when I saw the dishes in the sink, I felt happy because I guessed that you would come back from your trip, or from the hospital, or from work, or whatever it was. And now I want you to tell me all about it so that I can liven up some scenes in the short story I'm writing. This was just the example. More likely, we're going to say, because of what I want or need, and now what do you want them to do differently? So now you're taking the I statement and you've given your rationale for where you're coming from, and you're basically working on problem solving or coming up with a solution. So in the second example, it would be when I saw the dishes in the sink, I felt irritated because I want to start cooking dinner right away. And I want to ask you to help me do the dishes right now so dinner will be ready by the time our guests arrive. And you can do this example with almost anything. One of the nice things about the 7 Challenges Workbook is that you only have to work on one challenge at a time. You don't have to work on any. But this is a way of coming up with solutions that are a win-win for everybody. And when our loved ones are especially in an unwell place where their brains aren't working properly, and we're not in a great place either, then it becomes really important to have some skills that are really focused on coming up with win-win solutions, because that will also help us keep the tone kind, compassionate, caring, and positive. Another way to look at the issue of communication, and I always refer my clients to this, and anybody else who let me share it with them, is from Dr. Xavier Amador. I am not sick, I don't need help. He created the LEAP message, which means to listen, empathize, agree, and partner. And what it really means is that this is for any time that you have something very important to say to your loved one. You know that you're probably not going to agree about it, and you want to be able to plug up the holes before you start the conversation. So in some ways, it's like becoming a lawyer or a journalist, where you have a curiosity, but you also have an agenda. And one of the things about this approach is that it enables everyone to kind of learn about how to elicit another point of view, what's really going on with the other person, what is it that's happening for them. It promotes really hearing what the other person has to say, and it invites the same. And the funny thing is that when our loved ones are all over the place and they're confused and they're uh, believing things that may not be true, but they hold on to those beliefs anyway, when they are unwell, when their thinking is distorted, if we can show some genuine empathy and caring, and we can really pay attention and we can reflect it back to them and they feel heard, it tends to diffuse the whole situation, so that tension and anger and defensiveness tends to dissipate. To say matters a great deal. So leap means to listen or empathize, or even agree to disagree with, or to partner, meaning that we're going to find some common ground. And the way we're going to find some common ground is that I'm just going to listen to what you have to say. And sometimes what I encourage people to do is to take notes, because it's easier to reflect back, especially when what's coming up in your own mind is disagreement, or yeah, but, or I don't agree, or whatever it is. It keeps you focused on the task at hand, which is to listen. And so it means to listen to the delusions, the I can never say it right, desires, and to repeat back what you've heard without comment. You just the facts, ma'am. What anosognosia is means lack of insight. Very often, when individuals are highly symptomatic and their brains are very distorted in their thinking, they might be delusional. That is when they have very minimal insight into themselves, their symptoms, and their behavior. So we want to listen for that. We might hear them say things. I mean, think about it. Why are we going to have this conversation about medication if they don't believe they're sick? Who takes medications when they're not well, when they are well? None of us. So if they believe they're unwell, they're more likely to hear what you have to say, but that you have to first hear where they're coming from so that you will have a way to reach them. If they ask you for your opinion, delay it. Tell them the following. I'll tell you what I think after I hear more about whatever it is that they're talking about. And you want to tell them later what you think because you really want to have a very clear, crystal clear understanding of what it is that's going on with them, what they're thinking about, what things. So when you finally give your opinion, we use what's called the three A's. We apologize. I want to apologize because my views might feel hurtful or disappointing. So I'm apologizing in advance because what you're really doing is you're creating a foundation where you're saying that what comes out of my mouth may not be very nice, but please understand it's not because I don't love you and I don't care. So you're already taking care of the difference in perception. The other thing you want to do is you can say, I could be wrong. So acknowledge your own fallibility. We don't know everything. So we apologize because we might respectfully disagree with their conclusions, and I could be wrong because I don't know everything. And then we can agree to not agree, and we can agree to have mutual respect for having different points of view. And then we can empathize, which is a strategic way of having empathy for delusional beliefs. So, for example, the example that they're using here is the wish to avoid treatment. So let's say we are having a conversation. We say to our loved ones, I really want to hear what your thoughts are about treatment, about going to a day treatment program or working with a mental health treatment team, and they tell you things like, I'm not sick, I don't need help, I have this under control, I've lived with this all my life, I'm doing well enough, my basic needs are taken care of, I don't have any issues, I get along well with other people. And then you would be writing this down and you'd be feeding it back, and then you would say, well, are you finished with everything you have to say? You always want to make sure that they have fully expressed themselves, they feel heard. And then you say, okay, I want to apologize in advance because what I say may sound hurtful to you, and I don't mean to do that at all. And the other thing is, I could be wrong. I don't know everything. I think that I have proven that over the years and time again. So I could be wrong. And I hope that if we don't come to a place of agreement, that we can agree to disagree and that we can respect and love each other enough that there are times when people who love each other don't always agree. And then you might say what you say, which is, I see that you have these ideas that are holding you back. For example, um, a very common one actually is that feeling that there are bugs under the skin. And so I feel like I have bugs that are growing in me and they're under the skin. And I've gone to 7 doctors and they haven't found anything. And I'm feeling like I have to gouge under the skin. I've heard this from loved ones and clients. And what I would say, I want to apologize because my views on this might be hurtful or disappointing to you. And I could be wrong. I don't know everything. It just seems to me that after you've gone to 7 doctors and you've had all kinds of tests and you've washed everything you own and you've rubbed your skin with a stringent shampoo or soap, that you've taken care of the matter, and now it might be something that we might want to look at your meds. You might need to have them tweaked. I can't imagine how horrible it must be to feel like you have bugs living inside your skin. That's the empathy. I can't imagine. And I know that you've gone all these other routes. Is it possible that you can try one more doctor, one more treatment to see if maybe this will knock that out? You have nothing to discuss, only perceived problems, review the advantages and disadvantages, which is basically what I've done. I like to use a lot of one-liners, and the reason I like to use a lot of one-liners, which I learned when I became a facilitator for the Becoming a Love and Logic Parent program developed by Klein and Fay in the 1990s, and is now an evidence-based program you can find on their site, loveandlogic.com. I like these one-liners because they get you out of the fight. As long as you can remain um, calm and not sarcastic, you can use them. One of the ones I really like, especially when my loved one is delusional and she keeps going back and back and back on something I've already given her an answer to, I'll say, I love you too much to argue. I love you too much to argue about this. I am not going to have an argument about this. I love you too much. And then you can see there are other one-liners. Try not to worry. When you say that and you know that there are consequences that they're going to experience from their behavior, um, and you can say, I know that your boss isn't going to be happy that you're blowing them off again. And they say, well, you're not calling to let them know that I'm not well, because of course we don't want to do that because we don't want to enable. We would say, try not to worry. That's all. It means that the consequence is coming no matter what, but if they don't worry about it, then everybody wins. And when you say the word try not to worry, what you're really doing is assuming that they might want to give this some further thought. So these are one-liners that I find very helpful in communication to get out of the fight and to stay away from conversations with individuals when they're highly symptomatic and they're delusional. Make good choices. Err on the side of self-care. What do you need to take care of yourself right now? If it means taking a break, then take the break. If you need respite, get yourself respite. Give yourself permission to do that. Pick your battles. You have to do this as a parent. We have to do this as a child with our parents. You always want to pick your battles. And I've learned over the years that the only battles that I'm going to go to are the ones I have the highest likelihood of winning. Why go to a losing battle? No point. Pick a battle that you can win. And we want you to implement the 4 questions from Katie Byron, or I mean Byron Katie's The Work. 4 questions. The first one, is it true? Yes or no? If no, you move to the third question. If not, you go to the second question. Can you absolutely know that it is true? Meaning, in all situations, under all circumstances, at all times, this situation is true, yes or no? And how do you react? What happens when you believe that thought? What happens with your body? How do you feel? And who would you be without that thought? Picture yourself without that thought. So, for example, especially for parents who have adult children who have a serious mental illness, one of the first ways that we tend to approach this is, I must have done something wrong. I must have been a bad parent. I must have been an unavailable parent. And by the way, if you have a partner who has had an episode that you weren't aware was a part of the package when you were first contracting to communicate with each other and to have a life together, whether it's through marriage or through long-term agreement, um, we start to blame ourselves first. So typically we'll say, how could I have not seen this coming? What can I do? What did I do? How did I cause this? Which is why this is called the 7 C's, because what you realize is that the way you're thinking is erroneous, because you can't absolutely know that it has anything to do with you. So how do you react? What happens when you believe that thought? And usually what happens is our breathing gets shallow, our body gets really tight, our heart rate goes faster, we might break out into a sweat, we might develop into a moodier person, we might become more irritable. We might also go the reverse. We might go way out of our way to smooth things over, to become fixers, to have some look for some control. Generally, we don't like any of these options, but this is typically what happens to us. What would you be without that thought? If you didn't think that you caused this behavior or that you had any control over it or that you made a bad decision by engaging with somebody, especially if it's not a family member, um, who would you be without that thought? You would probably be somebody who is truly sincere, who just wants to be a part of this person's life because you care about them and you love them. And all of a sudden, your shoulders drop, your breathing calms down, your heart rate slows down, and you start coming up with solutions. Check out the work by Bob. And finally, celebrate yourself. Recognize I am worthy, I am loving, I am kind. I deserve the best, and I offer the best. I persist. If you want the recipe for resilience, this is what it is. So, how are you going to celebrate yourself? You might want to start with this affirmation: I am worthy, I am loving, I am kind. I deserve the best, and I offer the best. I persist. The thing about affirmations, they're always in the here and now. And that because our consciousness has no sense of time. So if we say this and we believe this, we can step out of trying to control things we have no control over, trying to fix things we can't fix, that we can't repair because they're not ours. We can learn how to modify our behavior so we could be truly supporters and not controllers, and we can also become allies and partners with our loved ones on their journey so that they can still be a part of our journey, and our families benefit by having a full family experience to the best of our abilities under these circumstances. I always want you to kiss, keep it simple. And finally, I like to always end this particular kind of a session on the serenity prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. The reality is, the things we can't change, if we can just accept that we can't change them, it gives us such a relief. The burdens are lifted from our shoulders. Courage to change the things I can. What can I change? It, in many of our households, it might mean looking around, just like we baby proof when we have babies that come to our homes, or puppy proof when we have puppies. We always want to create a safe environment. What is this going to look like regarding our loved ones? What do they need to have in order to have a safe home? What kind of relationships do they need to have that are safe for them? And what kind do we need to have that are safe for us, that are loving for us, that are nurturing for us? And that's where the wisdom to know the difference. If you'd like more information on Grow a Strong Family, visit us online at growastrongfamily.org. You can always email us at gasfinc@outlook.com or call us at 781-405-8376. As always, take what you like and leave the rest. It has been our pleasure to bring you the 7 C's.